Hello everyone, thanks for joining us on this edition of the 6 p.m. primetime newscast on Equinox Television live from our headquarters in Cameroon's economic capital, Douala. I am Bable Jonathan in a lone top story in this edition of the primetime news. Despite stiff criticism from members of the civil society and politicians who have qualified President Paul Biya's emergency aid plan to displaced persons in the northwest and southwest regions of the country and those in Nigeria as a misplaced priority, government decides to begin implementation next week. Territorial Administration Minister Paul Atanganji made this information public during an interministerial ad hoc committee meeting in the nation's political capital, Yaoundé, yesterday. Thanks for joining us on this edition of the news on Equinox Television. Despite the fact that so far government has collected just 1/10 of the envisaged close to 12 billion francs CFA for the emergency aid plan to displaced persons in the northwest and southwest regions of the country and those in neighboring Nigeria, government has announced that the implementation of that plan begins next week, and the Territorial Administration Minister Atanganji Paul published this information during an interministerial ad hoc committee meeting in the nation's political capital, Yaoundé, yesterday, despite stiff criticism that continues streaming in from the civil society and, of course, from politicians. Details in this report compiled by Fomi Armstrong Sanda.
At the time when the collection of funds is still ongoing, the government announces the start of work for the interministerial committee charged with the implementation of the National Emergency Humanitarian Plan by next week.
We are holding this meeting after receiving precise instructions from the head of state, His Excellency Paul Biya, who has instructed us to give him a clear program on how we intend to carry out activities on the field. And I can clearly tell you that as from next week, we will start our activities on the field.
Alongside the Minister of Territorial Administration, President of the Interministerial Committee are members of government involved in the management of the Anglophone crisis. Even when it is certain that their activities begin next week, very little is known on what exactly will be done and how it will be done on the field.
The technical ministries have come today to see how to execute the plan of action.
With the Minister of Communication taking an appointment with media men and women, it is expected that a detailed action plan will be unveiled by the government spokesperson. The National Emergency Solidarity Action Plan was launched by the Prime Minister, Head of Government Philemon Yang, on the 20th of June 2018. The committee is therefore about to begin work at the time when approximately 700 million francs CFA have been collected out of the initial envelope evaluated at 12.7 billion francs CFA.
And the Social Democratic Front, as well as other opposition political parties and members of the civil society, continue maintaining that President Paul Biya's emergency aid plan is like taking the second step before the first. In other words, it's a misplaced priority. They think that the crisis should have been resolved first before any humanitarian action. Details in this report by Fomi Armstrong Sanda.
According to the SDF senators during a press briefing in the nation's political capital Yaoundé, the institution of the Special Humanitarian Emergency Plan initiated by President Paul Biya to help displaced and aggrieved English-speaking Cameroonians in the northwest and southwest regions is less important than dialogue, which could be a possible solution to the Anglophone crisis.
We, the SDF senators, have expressed our reservations regarding the ongoing contribution or donations. Our reservations are predicated on the fact that priority should be given to inclusive dialogue that will lead to a lasting solution to the crisis. A project that focuses solely on addressing the humanitarian component of the crisis while violence escalates with every passing day is clearly designed to fail. For in our considered opinion, it is tantamount to putting the cart before the horse.
According to the SDF senators, ever since the humanitarian emergency plan was launched, the death toll continues to rise in the two English-speaking regions as violence and gun battle continue.
The question that begs for an answer is thus: under which emergency humanitarian assistance plan shall the additional losses be covered? A comprehensive approach is therefore required, beginning with an emergency peace plan that will stem the tide of violence and put an end to further killings, destruction of property, and displacement of persons.
To the opinion of the SDF senators, the proper approach to manage the humanitarian emergency plan would have been
the setting up of a commission headed by an independent personality that would include other political parties, religious, civil society, and traditional authorities to manage the humanitarian efforts.
The senators find it unacceptable the persistent refusal by Parliament to carry out debates on the Anglophone crisis, but instead are now compelled to contribute towards an effort over which the parliamentarians seem unable to control, despite their constitutional power to control government's action.
Innocent as a reporting. Now we come back to Fomi Armstrong Stander, who reports Barrister Agbobala's condemnation of the poor detention conditions, notably concerning inmates at the Boya Central Prison, some of them who were recently transferred to the nation's political capital, Yaoundé, and the president and founder of the Center for Human Rights and Democracy in Africa, Barrister Agbobala, has been condemning their poor detention conditions, calling on the authorities that be to do something to ameliorate the conditions in which inmates are being detained, especially the Anglophone inmates as well as other inmates in detention centers across the country. For me, Armstrong Sander.
In a soft copy document dated Tuesday, July 3rd, 2018, Barrister Kongo Felix Agbobala, president of the Center for Human Rights and Democracy in Africa, describes the torture of some 18 Anglophone detainees in Yaoundé as brutal. The 18 detainees were ferried from the Boya Central Prison in the southwest region of the country to the Kundenge Maximum Security Prison in Yaoundé, where they are currently detained in Kosovo, a section of the Kundenge prison. The barrister says these detainees have been kept in tight chains and being brutally tortured by prison guards who repeatedly call them Amazonians. He added that some of them are suffering from injuries, with one having a broken hand and another a decaying wound, in what he termed a repeated pattern of treatment upon Southern Cameroonians and alleged separatists. The human rights advocate says none of their rights are being respected, the presumption of innocence seemingly inexistent, and authorities act with impunity. He further revealed that the brutal torture of these new detainees by prison guards in Yaoundé prompted a strike action by other Anglophone inmates who felt the pains of their brothers. The same document says the strike action caused the registrar of the Kundenge Maximum Security Prison to react by disclosing that the order to place the said detainees in chains came from hierarchy. Our efforts to get corresponding images from the Kundenge Maximum Security Prison were fruitless.
Coming up, we take a look at rising insecurity in Cameroon's economic capital. Douala. Focus is, in this newscast is on the Besenge neighborhood, one of the areas where theft and other criminal activities are on the rise.
No day passes in Douala without a city dweller falling victim to any form of aggression. Armed robbery, banditry, rape and killing are the most common forms of these phenomena in the economic capital Douala. One of the neighborhoods highly affected by increasing insecurity is Besenge in Douala 1 subdivision.
This quarter bad. The security of this our area is dangerous. We don't have. We cannot say we have people who take care. If there's any problem, they will come, or police or any person who is capable.
Many have reportedly had their telephones snatched by bandits along the stretch of roads from Akwa to Rond Point Daido through Besenge. 2 days ago, armed robbers broke into a microfinance institution, held workers at gunpoint and made away with a huge sum of money. Faced with this persistent insecurity, inhabitants of Besenge have been questioning the role of the forces of law and order.
Even when there's as what happened, Brakash in our area here, we had nobody to intervene. We went right to the police office to call policemen to come and intervene. They refused. They told us that they don't have that right, that we have to go to another police station, that they should come and intervene.
To put an end to this problem, the population of Besenge have a couple of suggestions to make.
They should know that we are living because they are also living, and then they are there to protect us. But if we don't have protection, we don't know what to do. Then we find ourselves in a pit.
To give Douala city dwellers a permanent reason to have a sound sleep, social critics say law and order must come back to whom it is due.
And the minister delegate at the presidency in charge of defense, Joseph Betia Somo, has dismissed information circulating indicating that some French soldiers had joined the Cameroonian armed forces to fight the separatist fighters in the northwest and southwest regions of the country. He's at the moment answering questions from parliamentarians at the hemicycle in the nation's political capital, Yaoundé, and he has said the information that had been circulating, suggesting or saying that some French soldiers had joined the national armed forces in the fight against the secessionists in the northwest and southwest regions of the country is false. That is the information streaming in right away from the nation's political capital, Yaoundé, where the minister in charge of defense is answering questions from parliamentarians at the hemicycle in the nation's capital. And a few days after the president of the republic, Paul Biya, made some major appointments in the health sector, he has again appointed other top officials. He has appointed Adum Garwa as board chairman of the National Institute of Youth and Sport, that is NGS, in the nation's political capital, Yaoundé, and Galega Fe Helen Kwanga is now the new board chair of the National School of Administration and Magistracy, ENAM, and of course Ibal Manye Edmond and Wadum Fofu Chamberlain will serve as Director General and Deputy Director General of the National Institute of Youth and Sports, respectively. Now we take a look at efforts to solve the energy crisis in the Republic of Cameroon. It should be noted that Cameroonians from the big cities to the hinterlands are lamenting every day over power failure, and in some areas no supply of electric energy. Details in the upcoming report.
Inadequate or no supply of electric energy and recurrent power failure are problems affecting several parts of the Republic of Cameroon, from big cities to the hinterlands. The situation on the ground is that a day cannot pass by without power failure or low voltage.
Quand il y a baisse de tension, on n'est même pas capable de voir un seul match de football.
In the quest for a change, members of parliament say renewable energy is an important therapy to the energy supply deficiency in Cameroon.
Les énergies renouvelables.
Renewable energy could be an alternative to supply the maximum quantity of electric energy at low cost to the majority of Cameroonians, especially the needy. Our Chinese, German and Swiss partners with whom we collaborate could supply kits of solar energy to solve this problem.
Parier à cette situation.
Energy Production and Distribution Company, ENEO, says
Nous aimerions renforcer
It wants to support government's policy on renewable energy, considering the ever-rising demand of energy, of electric energy in Cameroon.
Vertigineuse de la demande en énergie. Eneo a réalisé à Djoum.
It has already established a close to 186 kilowatt solar energy plant in Djoum.
La plus grande difficulté qu'on peut relever, c'est
meantime, a major challenge highlighted by Eneo that should be cleared off is the lack of political will to accelerate legislative mechanisms and government's energy supply policies.
La politique d'approvisionnement.
Hundreds are dying, thousands are missing every day en route to Europe through the sea, and many continue undertaking the perilous journey, especially Africans, people coming from African nations. A second migrant ship has docked in Spain, courtesy Euronews.
A ship run by the Spanish proactive Open Arms charity carrying 60 migrants has arrived in Barcelona. It's the second ship to dock in Spain recently after Italy and Malta closed their ports to boats carrying migrants. There are various nationalities on board, including Palestinians, Syrians and Ghanaians.
Well, the conditions are good. The health conditions are good. We have a medical team on board. They check everybody. They are happy because they are going for a ride to Europe. They have the hope to start a new life, but at the same time, people suffer a lot of. The Spain athletes suffer tortures, all kind of abuse in Libya.
It comes after the first ship, the Aquarius, landed at Valencia 2.5 weeks ago with around 630 migrants. They'd been at sea for over a week and were at the centre of tensions in Europe over the migration policy.
Coming up, the smart side of the World Cup. We begin the smart side of the ongoing 2018 FIFA World Cup in Russia with news on Griezmann in the French national squad. Manjikan Gebre, good evening.
Good evening, Babila, and maybe before we begin with the first issue on our lineup, just to know that it's going to begin tomorrow. They have been on 48 hours of race. I'm talking about the teams that qualified for the quarterfinals of the 21st edition of the World Cup ongoing in Russia. And to note that already tomorrow we are going to have 2 South American versus 2 European teams that will go on the pitch, and among the two we have 3 champions that will be going. We have France, we have also Uruguay, and we also have the likes of the great nation that they call England. All of them that have picked up the title at least once. They will be going to the pitch tomorrow, but it's going to be something that is going to actually, we have Brazil that is also going on the pitch tomorrow. Brazil is a champion, so we have 2 South Americans and of course 2 European nations, but 1 or 2 of them are sure to pack home. As you rightly put it, on our package this evening we begin to talk about Frenchman. They call him Antoine Griezmann. Antoine Griezmann, as we can look, if we have to go through his profile as a French national player, he has scored a total number of 6 goals and 2 assists, and of course Antoine Griezmann is in his last 5 games in the knockout stage in major tournaments. Those are the goals he has scored, and he is one of the key players that France will be counting on tomorrow when they confront their opponents of the day, which is none other than Uruguay. Remember, both sides have once tasted the World Cup and they know what it means to carry that Caragol trophy at the end of the day.
And Griezmann and the Blues of France are making their way to the top of the competition.
Steadily but slowly they are making their way up, and just to note that France have never been beaten by a South American opponent at a World Cup since losing to host Argentina. That was in 1978. They have won 5 and drawn 4 of their matches. Now, just for us to note that we have some injury concerns that we are going to talk in the course of this edition. We had the name of Edison Cavani that is coming up. Edison Cavani is one of those dreaded strikers for Uruguay. That is, we hear he's injured and he might be sidelined tomorrow in their game against France. Is the latest we are having from Russia. Edison Cavani might be out of the game. That is tomorrow. And just to know that Edison Cavani is a perfect colleague of Luis Suarez. They are the key strikers of Uruguay up front. If he's not there,
many questions will be running in the minds of supporters. Will they actually succeed or not? That is a question we are asking, but it is not yet confirmed. It is feared that Edison Cavani might be out of the game against Le Coq de France tomorrow.
Now, you want to take us into the record books to take a look at records as far as France and Uruguay are concerned.
Yeah, before we get into the record of France, Uruguay, Babila, to note that Uruguay themselves, presently we have a striker who is struggling to climb on the ladder. I'm talking about top strikers of Uruguay in the World Cup. If we look at our table this evening, you will see most FIFA World Cup goals have been scored this far. We have one person, Oscar Miquels, who has a total number of 8 goals, and 2 current players in the Uruguayan squad that are almost reaching that level. Luis Suarez needs just a single goal tomorrow to equalize Oscar Miguez, who is the top scorer now for Uruguay in terms of World Cup history. And of course, Edison Cavani is on 5 goals. Should he score 2 goals, then he's going to meet up with, or 3 goals, he's going to meet up with Oscar Miguez. And should they continue in the competition now? For if you have to look at the table, Oscar Miguez 8 goals, Luis Suarez 7 goals, Diego Forlan with 6 goals, Edison Cavani 5 goals, and Pedro Cia 5 goals alongside Juan Alberto Chafino, who is also on 5 goals. So these 2 dreaded strikers, Luis Suarez and Cavani, maybe this is the World Cup for them to make history playing with Uruguay. So it is an opportunity for them to equalize the record. And why not?
And they may move up the ladder again when they meet France. When they meet France and they qualify to continue the tournament, and the goals keep on coming, and they are the ones who score fine, they will beat the records, their own personal record, and maybe a record that the nation of Uruguay is going to keep. Now, talking about the records between Uruguay and France, if we have to look at the records in the FIFA World Cup 2018, we have the records already on our on our board. We have the quarterfinals that have reached. Uruguay this far, they have played 5 quarterfinals games. France, they have played 6. And now we have 3 quarterfinals won by Uruguay and 4 won by France. And just to note, in this course, all of them, they have actually been so performant, even though France is having an upper hand in terms of experience in that confrontation. Now, the Uruguay versus France encounter that we're going to watch tomorrow is going to be handled by a South American. We have a South American team that is playing against a European team, and it is a South American who have been appointed to handle that game. The referee of the game is coming from Argentina, and he is called Nestor Pitana, who will handle the game Uruguay versus France. So it's a South American. So, you know, Babila, if we want to look at it critically, we might want to say, with our own African eyes, we want to say that FIFA is already giving a side on the South Americans, because Uruguay, South America, referee from Argentina, South America. Argentina that has been kicked out of the competition.
Yeah, and who knows? He might play a game off, and he find his country, representing.
Even though he's a human being and make mistakes, but we believe that he's a referee and he's going to do his job according to the rules and regulations of that profession. Well,
that's well said by Babila. And apart from the France-Uruguay encounter tomorrow, we have 2 games. We decided to look into Brazil also. Brazil will be taking on Belgium. And in the 2018 World Cup this far, if we have to calculate the number of goals scored, we have Brazil that have scored just 7 goals in front of goals. The Belgian side is very, very offensive. They are dangerous in front of goals. They have scored a total number of 12 goals against 7 for Brazil at the ongoing World Cup. And the one good thing with Brazil, they have a very solid, impermeable defense. They have conceded just 1 goal against 4 for Belgium. So it's going to be a tough match, a tough match to between Belgium and of course Brazil. That will be coming up tomorrow. And we looked into one player who is
the man who is the breadwinner, the breadwinner and the Brazil, or the goal winner.
Let me say, he is the person that most players want to pay attention on, but there are other important players that Brazil do have. He is Neymar. They have blamed Neymar da Silva Jr. that he has been making so much delay tactics since the World Cup started. According to our statistics that we had, Neymar has slept on the ground delay tactics for at least 14 minutes. That is during the group matches from the group stage right up to the level where they are. Neymar has actually wasted 14 minutes of his time sleeping on the ground for no good reason, just to delay tactics. That is what we gathered. You know, he's somebody who is very good, but also very controversial, because some players, they say he just loves getting attention towards himself. After all, he's a big player. That's what people will say, that at the end of the day, he's a big player.
All right, we now take a look at tomorrow's fixtures.
Yes, tomorrow's fixtures, just for a reminder, we already discussed that. Tomorrow's fixtures, we have the first game that is going to pit Uruguay versus France, two former winners of the World Cup. Brazil versus Belgium. Brazil, once winner of the World Cup against Belgium, they are still to taste that World Cup. But, as I earlier mentioned, there are 3 former World Cup winners that will be entering the pitch tomorrow, and 2 South Americans versus 2 European teams in context of tomorrow's game. Who is going to win? Who is going to go back home? It is only tomorrow we're going to talk about that. And just to note, as
FIFA sanctions.
Yeah, FIFA is already handling the game perfectly. FIFA has already sent packing 1 referee who was accused of mishandling or malhandling a game in the course of the World Cup. This referee is from German, and they call him, he's a German by nationality, and of course he is Felix Berich. This is the referee who handled the game between Switzerland and Serbia. FIFA has blamed the referee for not handling the game well, because a penalty that was very clear, referee Felix Berich decided not to give the penalty to Switzerland, enabling Serbia to actually beat Switzerland by 2-1. So FIFA has sent that referee packing. And just to note that already we are at the level of the quarterfinals. Many of us will not be watching matches again on this pitch. Moscow's Spartak Stadium is no longer being used. Another stadium that is not going to be used is Rostov Arena. That also will not be used again. And now talking about goals at the World Cup, just to note, at the World Cup already, we have a total number of how many goals that have been scored this far. It should be noted that in the course of the matches, we have been telling you this number of goals have been scored and this number of goals have been scored. To know that Belgium is one of those sides. 19 goals have been scored after 90. That is 19 goals scored after minute 90 in the World Cup. That means most of the goals are coming before 90 minutes. So 19 of those goals have been scored after 90 minutes. And maybe the last thing we should talk about, Babila, this evening concerns journalists themselves. You know, there are so many journalists who are in Russia, and they are also having the harassment from men. Like this picture that we saw, a journalist who is being harassed by a fan. You can see what is happening. He was trying to do his live stuff, and a fan coming from nowhere to disturb. So journalists are also having some little problems, and mostly the female journalists. The male are not leaving them to rest out there in Russia.
Yeah, we saw that equally in the last edition of the African Nations Cup, when people like Sylvester Hippolyte Zangao were reporting, and so many people were crowding around them and almost choking them up in Gabon.
Well, it's better being crowded than this harassment. You can be charged.
Thanks, Smart Jikan Gabriel. That was the smart side of the World Cup. Thanks, ladies and gentlemen, for staying with us. Goodbye.